18th of September 2017. Here's Double Wicket Maiden, the cricket news bulletin show on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm your presenter for today, Chukka Wilson. Here's what's been making news in the cricketing world. In the third and final test of the series at Lord's, England have bounced back to defeat the West Indies, allowing them to take the series 2-1. The West Indies won the toss and elected to bat, but were bowled out for just 123. They were 78 for 2 at one stage, before losing the last 8 wickets for only 45 runs. Ben Stokes was the star of the English bowlers, taking an incredible 6 for 22 at just 1.5 runs per over. England didn't respond that much better, making only 194, with the only half-century being Stokes. Kemar Roach continued his good series with an excellent 5 for 72, and skipper Jason Holder took 5 for 54. In their second innings, facing a deficit of about 70, the West Indies could only make 177. The only batsmen to make decent scores were Kieran Powell and Shai Hope. James Anderson took the best bowling figures of his career, 7 for 42, eclipsing his previous best, which was 7 for 43 against New Zealand in 2008. Needing just over 100 runs to win, England chased it with just 1 wicket down. The two not-out batsmen made scores in the 40s, Wesley and Stoneman. This series hasn't been the overwhelming success that England would have hoped for, with the Ashes fast approaching. Far from everyone getting into form, getting lots of wins under their belt, and coming to the end of the season completely in control of their games, we see them in many places uncertain, inconsistent, and vulnerable. Joe Root has certainly used this summer of 7 test matches to take charge of his team, build up his own leadership style and establish a style of captaincy, and while he's been doing that, he's been scoring lots of runs. But despite all this, he's going to be going into this series against Australia without complete confidence in his team, and without the massive piles of success he'd have hoped for. For the West Indies, they have been able to put up much more of a fight than anyone could have reasonably predicted or assumed. Despite having a very inexperienced team, despite having little recent form to work from, and despite having plenty of off-field problems to worry about, they have held their own and performed admirably throughout this series. Of the top 8 run scorers of the series, it's split 4 each between the two teams: Hope, Cook, Brathwaite, Root, Stokes, Blackwood, Malan and Powell. Meanwhile, in the bowling, it's exactly the same, with the top 8 wicket takers split evenly between them: Anderson, Roach, Broad, Stokes, Holder, Chase and Roland Jones. The standout of the batsmen was Shai Hope, who scored 375 runs at an average of 75, while the best of the bowlers by a long way was James Anderson, who took 19 wickets at just 14. The West Indies have not won a test series against an opponent other than Bangladesh or Zimbabwe since they beat New Zealand 2-0 in the spring of 2012, which was 5 years ago. The last time they won a test series against anyone was against Bangladesh, when they defeated them 2-0 in the spring of 2014, which was 3 years ago. 9 series have passed since that time. Meanwhile, England have now won 5 and lost 2 of their last 10 test series. In test matches between the West Indies and England, the West Indies have only won 3 matches since the year 2000. England continue to be one of the best teams in the world and are currently ranked third behind only India and South Africa. The West Indies, on the other hand, continue to languish down the bottom of the ICC rankings, and they are currently in 8th place, just in front of Bangladesh and Zimbabwe. As of now, England have no more test matches to play before the Ashes in November. They only have the rest of the summer, plus tour matches, in order to get their side in form, structured properly, and firing before the series begins. The current English cricket team can be largely divided into 3 generations. There are those players who have been playing for over a decade, and who remain from the old team that won the Ashes in 2009, 2010-11 and 2013, which are Alastair Cook, James Anderson and Stuart Broad. Then there are those players who have been playing for about 5 years. They have gone through plenty of patches of good form and bad, and have been able to rise up to senior positions within the team, which include Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow, Moeen Ali, Ben Stokes and Chris Wokes. But then there's a third category or generation of players. They are very inexperienced, having made their test debuts at some point during this summer, and have yet to perform in any significant way on the test arena. And in this way they are virtually unknown elements. They include 30-year-old Mark Stoneman, 28-year-old Tom Wesley, and 30-year-old Dawid Malan. Those 3 haven't made a test century yet between them, and yet they will occupy 3 of the 6 batting positions within the English 11 in the first test at Brisbane in November. And that's the news for this episode. This has been Double Wicket Maiden, the Cricket News Bulletin Show for the 18th of September 2017. I'm Chukka Wilson, and you're listening to Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. Until the next Cricket News Bulletin, remember to cock your wrists, play with soft hands, and don't let your centre of gravity go off balance.